Now, moving on to other stories, the International Monetary Fund has warned that Kenya is drifting towards debt crisis if the government's appetite for new loans is not checked. The IMF has told Kenya, the National Assembly Budget and Appropriation Committee, that Kenya's debt is approaching unsustainable levels. The IMF team also asked MPs to repeal the law capping interest rates, saying its impact has negatively affected borrowing to the private sector and small and medium enterprises. Last year, Parliament approved a law that capped interest charges on loans at no more than 4% of central bank rates.
Is Kenya in trouble?
The debt levels that we see now are still manageable in terms of the level. What we are concerned about is the flow of new debt. I mean, so the trajectory is going to a place where it will not be sustainable anymore, and where you will get into trouble eventually. So, as you know, it's our role to a large extent to warn, about when you're in a situation where you're generating too much new debt because of the deficit, that you eventually will end up in a position where it's going to be very difficult to deal with. Investors and so on are concerned about this as well for good reason. So it has not just to reduce the deficit so we can all be happy about that, but it also have real effects in the sense that investors and so on are more willing to come to Kenya.
$150 million that has come to an end. It's largely not been utilized in the past. I don't know what your view would be on that.
That program expires in March. Now, in the course of the program, we have a number of reviews of the program in order for this money to continue to be available. The second review that the IMF attempted to complete in early last year, in April, was not completed. And it was not completed because of some shortfalls on the fiscal side, and there were also issues related to the interest rate caps. Access to the money in the program was lost due to the failure to complete that review. With the expiry of the current program, we are here to start discussions on a new program that's been requested by the government, and we are hopeful that we will get an agreement as quickly as possible.
And we have also seen that Kenya has been downgraded in terms of international credit rating to B2. We would also want to hear your comment.
We recognize that the ratings that's been provided, and we are aware of it. But we don't make any particular adjustment about these rating agencies' views.
Behavior of the banks forced Parliament to intervene. So if the situation has to be addressed, it is two-way. Central bank must come in with a more convincing message to Kenyans that, yes, now we can control these banks.
All right, and well, IMF, they're warning that our debt might get to a point where it is unsustainable, and that is the headline of the Standard this morning. Uhuru's new 200 billion Eurobond loan spree, and the Standard has basically broken it down. And I was just mentioning off air that I think, soon we're going to literally have some economists who can break this down clearly, what this means, and what happens when debt gets to a point where it's unsustainable. But looking at the figures on page 6 of the Standard, you'll see that it's broken it down to when Mzee Jomo Kenyatta was in power. Kenya had borrowed 100 million shillings. Then it went to 629 billion under Moi's regime, 1.8 trillion to Kibaki, and now we had 5.4 trillion with Uhuru Kenyatta. But generally, if this money was put into the right projects, if it wasn't misappropriated, I guess Kenyans would probably be feeling the effect.
I tend to agree, and I appreciate what you've just mentioned, that it will be good to have an expert coming
analyzing
to talk. Yes, and analyzing
when they say we owe 100,000 shillings, each Kenyan owes 100,000 shillings. How do I owe it? Can I go and pay the 100,000 and
and you're done? It won't be having debt collectors anytime soon. But beyond this, for me, two issues arise. First is especially on this borrowing, and I tried to read on it yesterday, and one of the things that I realized was that despite the challenges that we are having, you realize that the money that's coming in has been spread out for a good number of years. That's showing that even those people who are now buying the bonds, they appear to have some sort of confidence in the country that despite the challenges that it's facing over the years, then the country should be able to repay back the money. And for me, most important, I guess, for me is, like you rightly mentioned, is how this money is going to be utilized. One of the things we see with Uhuru's government is the fact that it has a good number. Its basis is development, and it's the kind of development that's very futuristic. You want to bring up factories and sectors that had hitherto died. The manufacturing sector in itself requires a lot of input. You have the infrastructural sector that requires a lot of money as well. So these are projects that are going to take a long time, and are going to take a good number of investments for them to get back to what they were. So now what the government needs to do is to ensure that it's bringing the people, it's taking the people along. Because for as long as the people are not seeing the benefit of this project and feeling it, because creating that balance between your futuristic projects and the day-to-day needs of the people. Because someone will ask you, what's the point of having SGR that I might never use, as opposed to me getting my 100, 200 shillings that I'm going to eat at night.
To buy my unga and just live my life. Yeah.
So these are really good projects. I think what it needs to do is much more communication to ensure that it's on board with the rest, and there's public goodwill on the kind of project that the government is engaging with. Because one of the things it is going to solve is going to be a lot of speculation on its financial health. So that you ask a common person, they're saying, I'm really willing to put my hand in my purse and give money and persevere, because I know, as per my government, what my government has told me, in 10 or 20 years,
we shall reap the benefits.
We shall reap the benefits. So it's a lot of communication and ensuring that it has public goodwill.
Joe, one of the things that Uhuru's style and government has been accused of and criticized about is what Sandra is referring to as futuristic kind of projects, which on paper, they look very good. For instance, you have the SGR. They talk about, the manufacturing industry being, because that would benefit us as Kenyans over a long term. But the question is, what are the small-term goals that are in place to use this money effectively, so that at the end of the day, when I walk into to the mwananchi, when I walk into the supermarket, can I afford to buy unga? Can I afford to buy my children food? Can I afford to pay fees?
Actually, to the common mwananchi, what is normally in his head is about how the living standards. It's not about this futuristic project. But one thing that Jubilee is really trying is to try and institute some of these projects that can sustain this country for more years to come, for long.